this happened to me when I was 11 or 12 years old, over a decade ago, and I still remember it vividly. At the time, I lived in a semi-detached house with my mom, dad, and sibling. It was decent sized, but most of the impressive part was the garden, which essentially had 3 levels. The first level was concrete, the second was grass, and the third, also grass, had my trampoline on it. At the very end of the garden was a tree embankment. The area I lived in was somewhat hilly. One morning I woke up from a cracking sound, like a snapped branch, and I was worried since a week earlier a tree from the embankment had fallen onto our neighbor's garden. My bedroom was at the back of the house overlooking the garden, so I opened the curtain to see if another tree had fallen. Instead, I saw a guy hiding in one of the trees in the garden. He was pale, with blonde hair, and wearing all black clothing. He was looking directly at me, presumably because he saw the curtains move. He started smirking and moved his finger in a come here motion. I totally freaked out and shouted for my mom and dad to come to my room. I was so scared, I physically felt like I couldn't move. It was super early in the morning, by the way, around maybe 5 a.m., so it took my dad a good 30 seconds to get in my room, at which point the stranger had hid behind the trees. I remember being really shaken up. I was crying whilst I told my dad what happened. He went out into the back garden to see if he could spot the guy, but he was gone by that point. A bit of time passed and I started to forget about it. Then, about 3 months later, my mom and I were watching TV together after I finished school. The doorbell rang and my mom went to answer the door. I looked out the window of the living room where we were sitting and saw a white van parked outside. It was the same van as my uncle's, so I walked out of the living room into the hallway to say hi to him. When I got to the porch where my mom was stood, I realized it wasn't my uncle. It was the same guy I had seen in the garden a few months ago prior, and it really freaked me out. He noticed me as I walked behind my mom. It gave me the same smirk as he was in the garden. I wanted to say something to my mom, but I couldn't. I was freaking out inside. Anyways, he just asked my mom if she wanted work done on the drive. She said no, and he left, got back in the van, and drove off. He didn't give her a business card or anything. The van didn't have any company branding, and he did not knock on any of the neighbors' doors. I told my mom that it was the same guy as soon as he left, and she started to feel uneasy about the situation. A month or so after I got my first job doing the paper round, I had to deliver over 300 papers with my best friend at the time. It was getting towards winter and it was getting dark by 4:30 p.m. We'd been doing the job together for around a month, when the one evening after school it was super dark and rainy. We were halfway through delivering the newspaper and a van started following us, driving really slowly, at the same pace we were walking. We clocked that it was following us after a minute and we started to panic as I noticed that it was the same guy again. We left the newspaper trolley and started to walk fast up the hill. We were about a 10-minute walk from my house. I rang my mom, who made me stay on the line while she left the house to meet us. She told us to go to the corner shop that we were about a minute away from. When we made it to the shop, the van sped off really fast. The police were called, who came to my house for a report. We told them everything. That was the last time I ever saw the creepy stranger, but I still remember what he looked like so vividly. My name is Maddox, and I have 3 friends I decided to go out with yesterday. Bailey, Avery, and Colin. We decided to go to Bailey's car and head over to my town. My town has 2 parks in it and we were very bored. We collectively agreed to go to a park with a playground. When we got out of the car, Colin walked over to sit in a little memorial area and smoke. Bailey and I went on to play on the swings and Avery decided to watch us. A man wearing a bright orange shirt, camouflage pants, and shoes from Walmart strolled up from behind Colin. Colin has severe PTSD and this irritated him, but nothing happened yet. The strange man continued to walk and ended up sitting on a bench that was within a couple yards of the swings that Bailey and I were on. After a bit, Avery noticed the strange man staring at Bailey and I. Avery looked at the man and the man looked away. Avery cued Bailey with a look and Bailey tapped my shoulder and told me, "Hey Maddox, let's go over there," to where Colin was in the memorial spot. I silently asked why when we got to the memorial spot, and everyone agreed that the strange man had some weird behavior. I noticed the strange man move from the bench to the trees near the swings Bailey and I were previously on, still trying to observe us. Colin noticed how strange the man was being and instructed Bailey and I to get back to the car, and that Avery and him would follow last. Avery, Bailey, and I get to the car at the same time. Colin takes a moment to come back, but we all took the same path. Colin confronted the strange man with a little telling him, "Don't ever sneak up behind me again." And the strange man said, "Huh?" But that was it. The strange man began to take pictures of the car, and then Bailey suggested we head over to the other park that is by the police and fire station in case he followed us. So we did. We however got there and realized we should have gotten a picture of the strange man. Bailey drives us back over to the park and parks in the front of the post office to be safe. Colin gets out of the car to go look for the strange man, but he was gone. He must have darted as soon as we left and lives in the area. There was also more kids out at the playground when we came back. It was overall a weird experience, and I don't feel comfortable going back there without a knife or something. This happened about a year ago, and I've only told a few people about it, but for some reason I have found myself thinking back to it a lot lately. I was walking home from Walmart. It was close to 10 p.m. Our town is tiny and uneventful, and every establishment apart from the couple of 24-hour convenience stores close at no later than 11 p.m., so usually at this hour there aren't very many people out. That night, however, as I was walking, I suddenly heard what sounded like a man and woman yelling. It was coming from a parking lot a little ways up in the direction I was walking. I couldn't make out anything that was being said yet due to still being a relative distance away, and I initially presumed it was an average verbal dispute. As I got closer though, I realized it was far more serious than a mere lover's spat. The man was repeatedly shouting threats and other horrible things at the woman at the top of his lungs, and the woman in return was screaming at him in an extremely anguished tone to leave her alone. I had no doubt that the man was attempting to harm the woman if he hadn't already done so, and quickly dialed 911. By this time, I was close enough to the parking lot to where I could be seen by them if they happened to look in my direction. So while on the phone, I kept my voice down and tried to outwardly mimic the body language of being in a casual phone conversation. This guy undoubtedly came across as the retaliatory sort, and if he knew I was calling the cops on him, I could be his next target. Because their screaming continued during the phone call, the dispatcher heard it and rightfully picked up how serious the situation was. I described my location to them as concisely as I could, and within minutes 2 police vehicles arrived. One was a van and the other was a squad car. In the time between the phone call and the cops arriving, the people had walked away from the parking lot they were initially in and crossed to the other side of the street and began walking towards another parking lot a short ways down in the other direction. When they reached the point of being directly across from me, the woman looked at me, made eye contact, and pleaded, "Call the cops." I gave her a quick, subtle nod and made a slight quick gesture with my phone in my hand to assure her that I was doing exactly that. She seemed to get the hint because immediately after I did that, she screamed, "You're going to jail," at the man. It turned out that the other parking lot they were heading towards was where the woman's vehicle was. She was trying to make her way to it, but the man kept following her. This parking lot was where the cops met up with them. I, of course, continued to stay at a safe distance on the sidewalk that I was already on the other side of the street. The cops first interrogated the man, who loudly argued with them and tried to play off the situation as a heated verbal dispute. With how much he raised his voice, I could make out most of what he said, even at the distance I was at, and he essentially claimed that he recently broken up with her for cheating on him and that she kept following him. I stood there thinking, this is such BS. I hope the cops can see through it. There were 3 officers in the scene in total. 2 of them stayed with the man, while the 3rd went over to talk to the woman. She spoke much more softly, and I could not hear what she told them, but apparently it was very damning, because the next thing I saw was the man getting cuffed and put in the police van, which then drove off. My guess would be that he was being taken in for questioning at the very least. After the third officer finished talking to the woman, she was able to get in her vehicle and drive safely away. This assured me that at the very least she was in stable enough condition to drive steadily, which I was relieved about. After she left, the third officer walked over to me and asked if I was the one who called them. I confirmed I was. He asked me a few more questions, such as if I knew either of the people personally, which I did not, and any other details I could recall, and then took down my information for records. I remember continually thinking to myself that I very likely saved that woman from being severely harmed, or possibly even saved her life. Like I said earlier, few people are out at that hour in our town, and if I hadn't happened to be walking home from Walmart at that moment, who knows if there would have been anyone else around to intervene. I have not encountered this man since the incident, thankfully, and I sincerely hope the woman was also able to stay safe from him.